welcome to the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. Today we're going to take a look at the episode Capital Offense. Now, this is not capital spelled like a capital letter or capital offense. This is capital spelled like the capital of a country. Because this episode takes place in Washington, D.C. Oh, what an interesting episode this is. So, let's go through, as usual, all of the characters that we have to have a look at. First things first, we have, where is it? There it is. We have our murder victim, Congressman Wendell Joyner. Now, he is an actor who's been around since 1926. 1926 to 2009 is when he was born, anyways. 1926. Yes. He has been in, he was Mayor Richmond in General Hospital. Lieutenant Commander Thomas in Tora Tora Tora. I've never seen that one. That's in 1970. It's About Time. He was Mac. I think that's a TV series. The Cara Williams Show. Frank Bridges. For a year, maybe. His last acting credit was in 1991. The New Adam 12 TV series. What else has he been in? T.J. Hooker in 1986. 1980, The Fall Guy. He's been in a lot of TV series here and there. He was only Wendell Joyner in this episode of Murder, She Wrote. The Facts of Life, William Ogden Smith III. I remember The Facts of Life. Quincy M.E., he was several different characters. Fantasy Island, Project UFO, Policewoman. Policewoman? What is that about? That caught my eye. Hold on, what is Policewoman about? This was the first TV cop show to feature a female lead, Sergeant Pepper Anderson, an undercover cop for the Criminal Conspiracy Unit of the Los Angeles Police Department. Well, okay. Well done, Hollywood, I guess. Starring Angie Dickinson. Anyways, he was on Insight, the TV series, Cannon, The Invisible Man, Dr. Marcus Welby, MD, Kolchak the Night Stalker. He's been in a few things. Ironside, the TV series. He was in 4 or 3 episodes of that. 3 different characters. The Banana Splits Adventure Hour. Professor Owen Hayden. Okay. I have no idea what some of these are. But he's an actor. He's an older fella in this one. And he plays Congressman Joyner, who ends up having a heart attack in the opening scene of the wonderful show. Now, who else is in here? Well, we have Mr. Ray Dixon. He's at this party. Mitchell Ryan, still alive, according to IMDb. American character and actor. His last show was Strikeout, a TV short, Man in Car. He apparently plays Burke Devlin in Dark Shadows. He played the General in the original Lethal Weapon movie. Edward Montgomery in Dharma and Greg. And Frank Smith #2 in General Hospital. Okay. All 119 episodes of Dharma and Greg. Dear God. He apparently played Highfather in the Justice League TV series. 2 episodes of that. What else has he been in? Wings, Jonathan Clayton. I remember Wings. That was a cool show. Murder, She Wrote. He plays 4 different characters in Murder, She Wrote in 4 episodes. Capital Offense, this one, 1985. Oh, we've moved on to 1985. I guess we're far enough into the series that we've moved on to a new one. The new year. Okay. He played Captain Ernest Lenko 2 years later, 1987. Then 4 years later, 1991, he played Representative Arthur Prouty. And then 1995, played Senator Brent Renwick. So that's kind of cool. He was Dr. Wynn in Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. If anybody knows that, from 1995. What else has he been in? A Renegade TV series. A few movies. L.A. Law he was in an episode of. He was Jack in Who's the Boss. Santa Barbara, Anthony Tennell. That's kind of cool. I like that one. North and South. Oh, that's the one that's, about the Civil War. Yeah, that miniseries, 1985. That's cool. That's cool. He's been in a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Most of the stuff is back in the early days of TV, when stuff was really, really going crazy. So that's Mitchell Ryan. He played Mr. Ray Dixon. Then we have a Harry Parmel, who is played by Nicholas Pryor. And apparently his IMDb profile says, name a soap opera, and invariably character actor Nicholas Pryor has appeared on it. He's been in Lincoln Link Tyler, number 3, in All My Children. He was D8 male patient in The Hunger Games Mockingjay. That's fairly recent. Joel's father in Risky Business. Charles Warren in Damien, Omens 2. Very interesting. And he's still alive. Yeah. He's been in a few things over the years. NYPD Blue, John Colahan. That's Life, Party of 5, Gene Bennett. What else? Beverly Hills 90210 as Chancellor Milton Arnold. He's been in 26 episodes. Wow. He was in that a while. What else do we got here? Senator George Stewart and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Dr. Birch, Arnie's therapist in L.A. Law, 3 episodes. Murder, She Wrote. Harry Parmel, 1985. O'Malley's Luck, he was in 1990. David Kingston. And he was in 1991. Theo Kale in The Committee. 3 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. He's doing good. He's doing good in that one. All right. So, he's Harry Parmel. Now, Mr. Dixon is the head of a company. Harry Parmel is a lobbyist for that company. Then we have Congressman, is that the one that I wanted? Yeah, I think so. Congressman Dan Kepner. Yes. Congressman Dan Kepner. He is... Oh, wow. Yeah, he's been in a movie that I've seen. He's still doing movies today. He is known for The Monster Squad. He played Dell in The Monster Squad. One Life to Live. He played Dr. Elliot Durbin. He played Warwick in Graveyard Shift. And he played Sergeant Thor in Galaxina. That's an interesting poster. A typical sci-fi poster. He's in Suits as Henry Gerard for 5 episodes, I guess. He was in an episode of The Mentalist, which I loved. Trevor Lansing in General Hospital. He's played Dr. Jonas Zane in Jack and Jill TV series. He played a couple episodes of Sliders. I remember Sliders. That's a pretty cool show. Murder, She Wrote. Yeah, he's been in 5 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. 1985, 1991, 1991, 1993, and 1996. As all different characters. But in this one, he played a good character. He played Nafar in an episode of Babylon 5. General Krim in 2 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. David Keeler in Cagney and Lacey. So yeah, he's been in a few things. So he plays Congressman Dan Kepner, who is a friend of Congressman Joyner, the man who dies of a heart attack. Interesting. Now, we also have a young woman. Let's see here. If I can find her. I'm going to have to go see full cast to find her, because she's not listed. Aha! Martha Craig, uncredited, as Gwen Humble, who is known for a TV guest on Being There, The Scarlett O'Hara War, Paulette Goddard, The American Way, or possibly Riders of the Storm, called Linda, and Goodbye My Love Anne. Only 27 credits to her name. She hasn't been in a lot. She was in Jag for an episode, the Buccaneers miniseries, Lovejoy TV series. She was in 2 episodes of Werewolf. And she was Martha Craig in Capital Offense. In that episode of Murder, She Wrote, just the one. Not a lot to her portfolio. Then there is Joe Blinn, played by Gary Sandy. And he's an interesting dude. He was in WKRP in Cincinnati as Andy Travis. He was in Another World as Michael Thayer, As the World Turns by Hank Burton #3, and The Insider as Sandfur's lawyer. Terrence Kelly in The Young and the Restless for a few episodes. Diagnosis Murder. Oh, he was in another episode of Murder, She Wrote. Murder According to Maggie, 1990, as Keith Carmody. Interesting. Yeah, Andy Travis in 90 episodes of WKRP in Cincinnati. That was one of his big ones. Only 38 credits to his name. He hasn't been in a lot since 2004. Yeah. Huh. Who else is there? Well, we have Diana Sims, played by Linda Kelsey. 53 credits to her name. She is known for Lou Grant. She was Billy Newman. She was Kate Harper in Day by Day. She was Maureen Hannigan in A Family Torn Apart. I think that has Neil Patrick Harris in it. Yeah, Neil Patrick Harris is in that one. And Something for Joey. She was Joyce Capoletti. She was in 3 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. Oh my. 1985, Jessica Behind Bars. Mary Stam. So that's either later on in this season or early in the second season. She was in one in 1996. Ellen Levering? And she was Diana Sims in this episode. Ellen Barrett in Matlock, Day by Day, Kate Harper, Twilight Zone, etc., etc. So yeah, she had a few more credits, 53. Last one was The Egg Timer, a short film in 2010. She was in. We have Kay Shepherd, who is a bit of a gossip columnist, played by Edie Adams. The scintillating, sultry-eyed blonde, formerly a redhead, star of screen, TV, and award-winning stage, etc., etc. Edie Adams, passed away in 2008, sadly. Here's Edie. She was a costume designer. Miss Olson in The Apartment. Mrs. Tempest Stoner in Up in Smoke, Cheech and Chong. And I guess again, costume designer for Here's Edie. Huh. Only in the one episode of Murder, She Wrote. And I'm not recognizing anything. She was in Gary Shandling's show for a couple. I think as herself in one of them. Yeah, I'm not recognizing anything that she's done. But she's a very pretty woman in her bio picture and in this episode. She like an older woman, but still very pretty. I can definitely see where they get that she's got sultry eyes. Herschel Bernardi is Detective Lieutenant Avery Mendelsohn. Character actor. Known for Lieutenant Jacoby in Peter Gunn, Arnie Nouveau in Arnie, Inspector Lefebvre in Irma la Douce, and Phil Sussman in The Front, a Woody Allen movie. The last thing he did was in 1986, which makes sense because that's the year he passed away. 1986, Taking It Home, Papa Joe Morelli. There was an episode of Highway to Heaven that year, and he was only in that episode of Murder, She Wrote in 1985. Wow. That's kind of sad that after he made this episode, which was... when did it air? It usually says air date. 6th of January, 1985, and May 9th of 1986. So a little over a year after he made that episode that I just watched, he passed away. That's sad. That is sad. It always makes me think when I see and hear about, famous people passing away, especially ones that I'm familiar with. I mean, it kind of makes me wonder what could have been, what they may have offered the world. But as a character, his character in this episode, Mr. Avery Mendelsohn, was quite a charming man. And the last but not least, is Mark Shera, the actor playing an environmentalist guy who's having a bit of a relationship with Diana Sims. And his character, I kid you not, his character was called Thor Danziger. Thor. Very interesting. He was also in 2 or 3 more episodes of Murder, She Wrote. A 2-parter, Death Stalks the Big Top, Part 1 and 2. He played Raymond Carmody. Wait a minute. Raymond Carmody. Let me have a look. Where's Joe Blinn? I was looking at him earlier. He was in Murder According to Maggie, Keith Carmody, 1990, and this one is 1986, Raymond Carmody. Okay, that might be just a coincidence, but maybe not. So yeah, he was in that 2-parter, And then Murder Through the Looking Glass, 1988, Von Buron. Thor Danziger. He was also Jedediah Romano, J.R. Jones, in Barnaby Jones. 93 episodes of that. 37 episodes of SWAT, Officer Dominic Luca. And then did some single episodes in other TV shows. Murder, She Wrote, those episodes. And then it was Taken TV miniseries in 2002 was his last acting credit. Only 23 acting credits, but one of them was like 93 episodes and 37 episodes. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Makes me wonder what he's doing now. Bit of a handsome guy. Mark Shera, Bay, New Jersey, USA, as Mark Shapiro, known for his work on Barnaby Jones, SWAT, Right to Die. Okay. Very cool, very cool. So, in this episode of Murder, She Wrote, what has happened? What is going on? Well, we see a nice shot of the Capitol building at night, and then it moves on to the looks like a hotel room in a penthouse suite or something, and we see Senator Kepner talking with Mr. Palmer and Mr. Dixon. There's a couple other women around, one of whom is Martha Craig. They're having discussions and whatnot. Mr. Kepner has had a few drinks and this, that, and the other thing. While all this is going on, we see Miss Craig light herself a smoke and then hold up her lighter, which seems to have a hole in it, and she presses a button on it a couple times. And you hear click, click. It's a mini camera. Oh my. And he goes to get a new drink. Meanwhile, we have Dixon and Palmer talking to each other that getting Mr. Joyner, Senator Joyner, to come is the only way, or telling him that Joyner was coming was the only way to get Kepner here, because they're buddies. In comes Mr. Joyner, this older man, and Kepner is, greeting him and whatnot. Meanwhile, Joyner goes to usher him out, Mr. Kepner. Of course, the Palmer and Dixon are kind of, like leaving so soon, and Joyner loses it on them. He calls them scum and, parasites, and, he starts shouting and everything, and then he gets a bit of a chest pain as he's getting up in Dixon's face, and slowly collapses, basically having himself a heart attack. And while the three of them are crowded around the body on the floor, the Miss Craig opens the door, takes a couple more pictures with her mini camera in her lighter, and closes it. Then we go to Maine, as Miss Fletcher is on the phone talking to one of her friends about helping with the voter registration, because it's an important thing. Then somebody knocks on the door, and a dude shows up. He's not in it long, just for this opening bit. He comes in to talk to Miss Fletcher about a very serious problem. The fact that the Senator Joyner of Maine has died, and because of this, the governor wants Mrs. Fletcher to go to Washington and sit on his seat for a few weeks, because normally the party would just put the other leader or another leader of the party in there, but the primaries apparently aren't for another 3 weeks. So there's nobody really in a position to do that. But of course, Miss Fletcher is like, well, why me? I'm not a politician. I know nothing about politics. And this young man is like, that's exactly why the governor wants you. You're perfect for the role. You have no political ambition. You have a distinct, you know, desire to see your state, you know, done right. So there's no conflict of interest, and he wants her to step up and, you know, do for her state and her country. So Miss Fletcher ends up agreeing, and on to Washington she goes. We see Miss Sims answering the phone in the office, saying that Miss Fletcher's not there just now, but she's on her way. Next thing we see is Miss Fletcher in the car with Mr. Joe Blinn as he's driving her back to the senator's office. He's a PR representative driving along with some very fancy driving gloves on, which is a key point later on. And they have some discussions about, you know, the town and whatnot and how things go here. And he, of course, is letting her know that, you know, there's a great staff and whatnot. She's probably not going to have to worry about anything except what to order for lunch. You know, kind of like downplaying what her role is going to be. And Jessica pretty much kind of reads him the riot act by saying that, you know, she's going to do this job to the best of her ability, and he really needs to stop treating her like some addle-pated aunt from east of nowhere. Which he's like, oh. Then we see Jessica and Mr. Joe Blinn heading in through the building. She's a little amazed and at awe at the place. And they run into Mr. Kepner, who, you know, greets her and whatnot, and he basically is saying that they're on a couple of committees together here in the coming week, and it's great to meet her and everything like that. So in they go, continuing to Mr. Wendell Joyner's room, where she runs into Diana Sims. And Diana Sims kind of takes control of Miss Fletcher because she's the administrative assistant. It's her job to make sure she's settled. So he goes off for lunch, Mr. Joe Blinn, and Diana takes Jessica into the office and whatnot, and lets it be known that, you know, her resignation is on the desk, because normally any new congressmen's and women tend to bring their own staff on board. And Jessica's like, well, no, Congressman Joyner's staff is good enough for me, and crumples up the resignation, throws it in the trash. Because Jessica's just that sort of woman. She's not the type to basically, you know, put on airs or anything. She never has been. She's very down to earth. Next thing we see, Mr. Palmer comes in with some flowers, wanting to take Jessica for lunch. You know, kind of being all very nice and whatnot. And Jessica starts to thank him and whatnot, and is ready to go to lunch with him, but she sees Miss Sims shaking her head no. And of course she smoothly says that she ate on the plane, but, you know, perhaps another time, and thank him so much for his offer. And then Mr. Palmer leaves, and Diana Sims explains that he's a lobbyist, and his idea of working closely with the people is to wine and dine them and get them to vote his way. To which Jessica decides that there's a lot she needs to learn about this town and how things work. She's not used to it. She's going to need a fast education, she says. Next thing we see is this slightly balding, bearded man in the hotel lobby, kind of looking towards Jessica as Joe leads her into the hotel, getting her booked, getting her room key and whatnot. And he's going out. He's going to leave Jessica there because he's got a hot date. He's going to go and get himself some tips for the stock market. To which Jessica's like, "Isn't that a little bit illegal, or dishonest?" And to which Joe replies that word has malleable definitions in this town. We see Mr. Kepner heading into Stockman's Bar and Grill, and he places a phone call from there to Jessica Fletcher. Wants to get together and talk with her a bit about some stuff. But Jessica begs off because she's in bed. She's not even dressed. She's in her nightcoat and whatnot. So she'd like to do it tomorrow morning for breakfast. And Kepner seems a little bit... It's like he wants to talk to her tonight, but he'll put it off to tomorrow. He ends up leaving, and Martha Craig ends up talking to him from the party, seeing if he remembers her from the party and whatnot. And she produces photographic evidence of them over the body of Congressman Joyner, getting him to come along with her. We see Jessica then leaving the hotel in the morning, and we see the same bearded man slowly keeping an eye on Jessica for a bit, and then as soon as she starts heading down the steps, he moves to follow after her. He comes rushing down the steps, looking around for her, can't find her anywhere, except Jessica's behind him, and is like, "So who are you, and why are you following me?" To which he introduces himself as Detective Mendelsohn, and that he wants to talk to her because about the murder of Congressman Joyner. Of course, you see him kind of massaging his feet in a chair as they're having a bit of a tea, and he says it may not have been murder. The coroner did rule it as a heart attack, natural causes, but there is evidence that the body was moved, and when people are moving bodies, he thinks things aren't quite right. He ends up having a bit of a pain in his back, and has a few pills. He's a bit of a he's like takes out like 3 bottles of pills before he finds what he needs. Takes one for his back pain, and he kind of says that it's an old man thing. He's old. And his father. Now there's somebody who is in pain. He seems to be definitely Jewish in his persuasion, his ethnicity and whatnot, the way he talks, the way he purports himself. It's a little bit stereotypical, but not in a bad way. It's not meant in a derogatory way. That's something I've noticed about Murder, She Wrote. Pretty much any of the characters and whatnot, that none of them seem to be portrayed as in a bad way or in a derogatory way or meant to be harmful or offensive. They're just normal people. The next thing we see, Senator Kepner is laying on the ground in rough shape. Someone's rifling through his pockets, some homeless guy, and he ends up chasing him out onto the street. And a cop car drives by, and they seem to have an APB out on Mr. Kepner. So the next thing we see is Mr. Kepner in Mendelssohn's office, asking about his jacket and wallet and the key to Martha Craig's apartment, because Martha Craig has been murdered, beaten to death with a pair of bare hands, and his shirt has blood and makeup on it. Oh no. Indeed, indeed. We see Diana Sims talking to Miss Fletcher about some things that are coming up about this cannery bill that she needs to learn some things about. Also about where Mr. Joyner was, if he had any appointments. Or was that later? That might have been later. It might have been later. No, it was now. He was asking about the appointments, and there wasn't anything on the schedule, but she remembers that Mr. Palmer had invited him to a party at his penthouse, but he had chosen not to go. Then we see Thor Denzinger. That's right, Mr. Thor Denzinger shows up with the Ecological Foundation. He's got a wonderful little lion head pin on his tie, and Diana Sims completely brushes him off. It is quite obvious that he doesn't that she doesn't like him from the way she's acting. Then we see a bit of a meeting of some of the Congress about this cannery bill. Jessica's kind of whispering to Diana as Mr. Dixon is reading his testimony, and she basically is asking why he's reading it when it's all entered in. If it's all written down and everyone has a copy, why is he reading it out loud since everybody has it? Seems like a waste of time to Jessica. And of course she's like, well, that's just how we do things here. Joe is trying to get her to have lunch with some news lady. I think it was the what's her face, Kay Shepherd, and Jessica's begging that off. And Joe's basically kind of give you great exposure, and she's like, I don't need exposure, and he's like, I'm gonna keep trying. Then she goes in and finds Mr. Mendelsohn there, and Mendelsohn wants to talk to her about Mr. Kepner, who has been picked up. He's down at the station because Martha Craig was murdered, but his feet hurt, and when his feet hurt, things aren't kosher. And earlier he was saying that when his gut is all rumbly, it means something's not right. He's a very visceral man. So then Jessica goes down to the police station to talk to Mr. Kepner, and ends up basically coming to the conclusion that he didn't do it. She believes him because he claims that he went to her place, he had one drink, and then the next thing he knew, he was waking up. But no, he didn't kill her. He didn't kill Senator Joyner either. The man died of a heart attack, and he was drunk and just went along with what the others wanted to move the body. He seems like a man kind of at the end of his rope. The poor guy. So we see Detective Joyner and Jessica looking at the body of Martha Craig. They don't show anything, just show Jessica's reaction to seeing it. And Jessica's quite visibly upset with it. But she tells Mendelsohn immediately after that she's absolutely sure that Kepner had nothing to do with it. Because somebody beaten that badly, more blood would have gotten all over his shirt. And he would have had blood and makeup on his hands. But he didn't. So she gets the good detective to take his jacket off and says that if what Kepner was saying is true, and that he was innocent, then drugged and unconscious and had to be moved to this alleyway. Somebody had to move him. And what's the best way to do that? And she slips her arms around, clasps him in front of her, right at chest level. And the detective is like, traces of blood and makeup from the killer's hands on his shirt. And he's like, you should have been a cop, Mrs. Fletcher. She's like, I'm only a cop when I'm at a typewriter. To which Mendelsohn replies, you're not at a typewriter now. Which is really cool. I like that. We see Diana Sims and Joe Blinn talking and whatnot about Mr. Kepner and whatnot. Jessica gets Joe to find out what he can about Martha Craig. So he goes off to do that. We see Mr. Dixon and Mr. Palmer having a brief meeting where Palmer's basically telling Dixon, if this comes down to a murder investigation, I'm protecting myself, not you. Because he doesn't know if Dixon killed her, but he's not trusting Dixon at all. Then we see Diana going home and meeting with the Thor, Mr. Denzinger. But she seems to know him. And they have a nice little tender moment. Oh, it seems that animosity was a put on. So he goes and shows a photograph of him and another woman, Miss Martha, who is dead, and he said, Diane seems to have already seen this one before. But he says, no, this is a new one. And it came with this note. And the note says, stay away from Mrs. Fletcher. You won't be warned again. Oh, no. We see Mr. Mendelsohn, the good detective, and Jessica at Martha's apartment. Kind of marveling at how fancy it is, since she didn't really have a job. And she notices, Jessica, as she's looking around the place, a photo from her youth, from high school. And she sees not only Martha in that photo, but Diana Sims as well. Oh ho! What is this? What is this? But also a couple of other little things that she notices as well, which we'll come into later. Next we see Jessica meeting with Kay Shepherd for lunch. And Kay has a cat, and they bring some milk over for the cat and whatnot. Jessica makes a comment that she didn't think that was allowed, to which Kay's like, it's not. But in this town, you have clout, and you use it. That's how things work. So Kay has some information, but she wants information from Jessica. Quid pro quo. But she's willing to trade for it if Jessica is willing to. And the information she has is that she saw Martha coming out of the Watergate Hotel and Mr. Dixon shortly thereafter having an argument with her. Joe comes in with some information, next scene. Not too much of it, however, about Miss Martha. And Jessica kind of is like, could you get some more on Martha for tomorrow, please? That would be good. And he's like, I'll do my best. I'll do my best, but I got a hot date. Jessica then starts looking through Rolodex, and she finds Diana Sims' address, because she found out Diana Sims wasn't in today. She called in sick. Right after she finds the address, Mr. Kepner comes in and has a little heart-to-heart with Miss Fletcher about how he's going to have a call into New York. He's not going to seek re-election next year. Jessica tells him that's a mistake, and that she can tell and knows that he's an alcoholic, and yeah, he's been off the wagon, but what he should do is, at the first available opportunity, take a flight home to New York. Go talk to his wife, because she's pretty sure that his wife will surprise her. She seems to get through to him, make some actual headway against his depression she reaches out to him, and it's a wonderful moment. It kind of gave me chills a little bit because how heartfelt it was between these two actors, this actor and actress. The next thing we see after he leaves is Jessica showing up at Diana's house, coming in wanting to talk about this cannery bill and whatnot, that it's important. She kind of blusters her way in before Diana can, say anything one way or the other, and then says that they should ask Mr. Denzinger, and that, he should come out of the bedroom. To which she shows the ashtray with a few cigarettes in it and says, I noticed the no smoking sign on your desk when I first came in. And Mr. Denzinger comes out, and there is a little bit of a, he's like, how did you know? And she not only lets him know about that, about the fact that she saw right through their wonderful little spat, but also that Diana and Thor and Martha know each other, because the little lionhead pin is the same symbol that was on the cheerleading uniforms in that photo. So she got a hold of a yearbook and found out that they all used to go to school together. But since when they first came to Washington, they did work together, but in the Martha kind of drifted away and started playing both sides. Next thing we see the photos being given to Mr. Mendelsohn as those to explain behind them, the reasoning behind the photos and where they came from. And the detective is a little confused about some things, but he's definitely interested in how things go. Meanwhile, we see Jessica being driven by Joe, and Joe letting her know about some of the other information he found. That he found out that Kepner had been seen being picked up with Martha outside of Stockman's Bar and Grill, where he made that phone call. And we see Mr. Dixon, and this was a wonderful scene. Mr. Dixon ends up meeting Miss Fletcher in the hall and having a little bit of a conversation where she asks him a question about Martha. And he, of course, says that he doesn't know her that well, really at all. And she looks at him and she's like, amazing. It's like, you didn't even react, bat an eyelash, or anything at that. Lying is an art, and you have mastered it beautifully. And I'm like, oh wow. She just stone cold called him a liar to his face, in a very eloquent manner. It was beautiful. He replies that, people in this town, that there's game that people play in this town, and those who are amateurs at it tend to get hurt. Bit of a threat there. We see her coming into Diana's office. She says something to Mrs. Fletcher to get her attention, and she ends up leaving before even going into her office, even though the meeting is going to be starting in 2 hours. She's like, just keep them busy till I get there. And she runs off. We see the Congress being all meeting up. And Senator Kepner is currently filibustering, keeping everything tied up because he's just talking and talking and talking about something. Just anything, something about the coastal lines of Maine and some report. And he's checking the time, so he's kind of making sure that things are okay in that regard. Jessica comes back in with Joe and finds Joe there, calls him into her office, and says that just talking to the detective, and they're pretty sure they know there may be some evidence in the penthouse. So they're going to go and check this out. The detective's going to get a warrant right after the bill is taken care of, and that's going to happen. So she lets him know that this is going to happen, and everything will be fine. They've got a good idea. And then as she's finishing telling him that, she seems to remember, oh, the bill, I've got to get there, I've got to vote on it, and rushes off to do that. Then he ends up going back. It goes back to the Congress, and Kettner gets a bit of a glass of water, and ends up turning the floor over because he sees Miss Fletcher has arrived. And then Miss Fletcher has a few things to say about this bill and whatnot, and that she did a little research and a little digging and found out that there's 5 canneries that have been shut down in Maine, in her state alone. And 2 of those canneries are owned by Mr. Dixon and his company. And that they can't even... They decided to close down the buildings because there wasn't... they didn't want to pay the money to update them to more modern processing equipment and whatnot. So they just closed it down. And now they're wanting to open a new one up. And she just can't find that conscionable. She has a wonderful little speech about it to everything, and she gets a bit of a standing ovation almost. People are clapping and whatnot, and then the vote happens, which is something that we don't get to see, but we do know that the vote passes, which is good, and that the cannery and whatnot isn't going to get opened up. Next thing we see is somebody breaking into the penthouse. And who is that someone? Who is that someone breaking in and wiping off the door handle? It's Mr. Joe Blinn! Oh my god! Is he the killer? And we see him sneaking in and finding a place to put the photographs, some evidence, at which point Mr. Mendelsohn shows up and ends up letting Mrs. Fletcher in after a little bit. To which they basically let him know that they're on to him and whatnot, and that he is the murderer, and that they know this because of reasons. Mostly because of the fact that he was wearing those fancy driving gloves when he first drove Mrs. Fletcher, but after Martha was killed, he wasn't. Which is why his hands have no marks, and why he's not wearing the gloves, because they were suede. And it's really hard to get blood and makeup out of suede. So he ended up beating her with his fists, and then getting rid of the gloves afterwards. But on top of that, he also let it be known about Stockman's Bar and Grill. And the police have already interviewed all of the suspects, like all the people in the bar. Nobody there saw him. So the only one he could have found out that information from was from Martha before he killed her. He ends up confessing to it, yes, but in a very cold, sociopathic kind of way. He doesn't seem remorseful at all, just that he got caught. It was a very potent little scene. He seems much more dangerous than he has been throughout the entire show. Throughout the entire show, he's been very charming, very affable kind of guy, but now he's just ice cold. Ice cold. And he gets let off. Then Mendelsohn offers to take her to a place that he knows that's kind of run by a relative of his, I guess, and that he wants to, has the best of something in town. I can't remember. And she asks if that's kind of fish. And he's like, oh, Mrs. Fletcher, he's like, you are unworldly in this regard. Please allow me to be the one to educate you. And escorts her out the door, and credits roll. And we're done this episode. So yes, that was this episode of Murder, She Wrote. It was a wonderful, wonderful episode. Although I am kind of wondering how it is that, I don't know if it's true that they can actually put somebody who isn't a politician just in position to hold a seat, and that somebody would go all the way to Maine to get a mystery writer to do it. That kind of stretches the credibility just a little bit. Just a little bit. But I liked it. It was an amazing little episode. I think it was one of those episodes where they're like fish out of water type deal, where they just like toss the main character in just to get a little fun going on. So it was pretty cool. I enjoyed this episode quite a lot. Quite a lot. So that's going to be it for this episode of the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well, if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comment section. What do you think of Murder, She Wrote and all the wonderful fun that Jessica Fletcher gets into? She's just a woman of many talents. So do all that, and join me next time for Broadway Malady, the next episode. It's coming up, and we're going to have some fun. Former Hollywood star and her daughter are about to open in a big new Broadway musical until Patty is gunned down in a bizarre robbery attempt. Oh no! So join me for that. Join me for Jessica Fletcher, and join me for more murder.